Chapter 52. Bach was discharged from care after a week. He remained at the infirmary for 2 additional weeks, working alongside the palace's healers to tend to the women and men wounded in the Battle of Ithanel, as it had been named. The infirmary's healers practiced folk magic, but unlike Bach, they were from the landowning class and had been trained through a formal course of study in Ithanel. He worried they may look down on a country healer, but the crew readily welcomed his help. He even learned a few new techniques, such as a specific healing spell for burns, which proved invaluable in treating victims of fire spells. If he could ever find a place in the capital city, Bach could see it being in the palace infirmary. There was also the solemn matter of Corrigan's funeral. One afternoon, Aventil came to the infirmary to inform Bach that Wingate had returned, and the burial would take place 2 days hence. "I know you did not bring clothes for the funeral. I'll have something sent to your room." Sure enough, when Bach returned to his quarters, he found a long, dark green robe draped across his bed. Dark green represented the natural cycle of inevitable death and renewed life in Imarinian culture. Bach lifted the fine garment to examine it. Yet another kindness from Aventil. I'm still not sure what I've done to deserve such friends. The funeral took place early in the morning, another Imarinian tradition. Bach was thankful for it on a day of Corrigan's burial. Autumn was coming, and the summer heat soon would ebb a bit, but the last days of summer still would be miserably hot. The early morning funeral also meant Bach had to rise before the sun to travel across the city. He walked to the stable to retrieve Becky, who had returned to the palace as healthy as ever. He fed her an apple and brushed her mane. Bach marveled at how the farm animal, used to pulling plows and hauling corn, had performed on their adventure. The people of the palace probably say the same thing about me. He took Becky to the front of the palace, looking to orient himself in the still confusing cityscape. He knew the funeral was to the north, and... "There you are, Bach. Come, ride with us." Aventil trotted down the red brick street riding his prized stallion, as he and Isabella waited in front of the palace's main gate. She wore a simple forest green dress. A tiara threaded with green ribbon pulled her hair off her face. Her familiar 5 bracelets hung around her right wrist. If anyone could look radiant at a funeral, it would be Imarinia's crown princess. Wingate and 2 more guardians rode behind Isabella and Aventil, the final time he would serve as her personal bodyguard. Following the funeral, he would become commander of the Royal Guard, as Corrigan had intended. "We wondered where you were," Aventil added. "We didn't want to leave without you." He motioned to Bach to join the group. "With you? And the princess? I have no formal standing in the palace. I will just be out of place." "Nonsense. First off, despite Her Majesty's presence, this is an informal procession. We both want you to come with us. But most importantly, you were a friend of Corrigan, as was I. He would want you to ride with us." So Bach did. "Shall we leave now, Your Majesty?" If anything, Wingate was quieter and more reserved than usual. "Just one more moment, Wingate. We still await one more." As if on cue, Kotarian rode around the corner. "We can depart now. I have arrived." He had traded his gray jacket for a dark green robe, but still wore his house pin. "I'm glad you were here, Kotarian." And Bach meant it with full sincerity.
"Of course you are. You may gaze upon me with wonder, Baron Blacksmith."
With that, they were on their way. Bach's emotions tingled in mourning for their fallen friend, relief at having survived, and elation over their victory. Regardless, he was glad they could be together again. The slain Royal Council members received lavish funerals, with their caskets paraded through the streets of Ithanel and proclamations honoring the dead by King Isbiano himself. Corrigan, on the other hand, was buried in a simple graveside service at a small hillside cemetery on Ithanel's north side. The king attended, but did not speak. He and Isabella stood at attention as numerous guardians honored their fallen commander with brief, unscripted remarks. Concise and honest. Corrigan would have had it no other way. Bach watched silently as the plain casket was lowered into the ground. As he prepared to return to the palace, a loud, shrill voice immediately behind him made him jump. "Hello there, Buck. You ain't leaving till I get a hug from the hero of the Battle of Ithanel." "Umra?" He turned to meet her, but at first he wasn't sure he saw the same servant girl from Nassim. She had traded her threadbare work clothes for a dark green dress similar to Isabella's. Her normally wild hair was combed and pulled back from her scrubbed-clean face. She looks, well, breathtaking. "Look at you, all fancied up. I reckon we both present okay when we borrow clothes from our rich friends." She flashed a broad smile. "Tavano and I got into town this morning, just in time to get changed and come over here. Can ya believe it? I've got my own room at the Royal Palace, and I'll be working on the 4th floor. Me!" "Ha! The royal family has no idea of the hurricane that is incoming. Careful, Buck, or you might get caught in the storm, too." She put a fist up to his chin in a mocking threat. After a shared grin, they looked around the well-kept lawn of the cemetery, at the freshly dug grave and the flower-covered casket beside it. "Poor Corrigan. I didn't get to know him well, but I wish I had. A brave soul, that one." Bach nodded. He was a difficult person to get to know, but I learned so much from him. I leaned on the wisdom he shared when we faced Salandrian. Umra clapped her hands against her thighs. "Now, that's a story I want to hear." Bach shared how the king and the House of Magic had been imprisoned, how the group nearly died in the passageway leading to the royal palace, and how they had worked together to defeat Salandrian and the Scions. "Anyway, I got extremely lucky that day." "You were more than lucky, Buck. You were brave, too. I must be truthful. I didn't know you had that in you. You're full of surprises, Blacksmith's boy." His face blushed. "Well, I recall a barmaid turned housekeeper saving all our lives, so I'm not the only one capable of surprises." "No, you certainly aren't." With that, Umra placed her hand on the side of Bach's neck and kissed him. She closed her eyes and her lips lingered on Bach's. "Don't lose that spark. Do you hear me?" Bach's heart raced as he took Umra's hand. He scrambled to think of a response. Then Tovano hobbled up, leaning on a plain wooden cane for support.
"Umra, if you would be so kind as to wait for me at the wagon, I would like a word in private with Mr. Omot."
Bach couldn't help but roll his eyes at the sorcerer's terrible timing. Umra walked away. "That was a nice moment. You owe me another one soon." She winked over her shoulder at Bach, who waved to the palace's newest royal assistant. "I certainly hope so." Tavano then motioned to Bach to sit with him on a bench near a cluster of graves.
"I am still regaining my strength. Salandrian and his scions took great delight in tormenting me, and they were quite efficient in their work."
Bach didn't look at the sorcerer, choosing to stare across the fenced-in graveyard. "I am truly sorry for that, Tavano. That should not happen to anyone."
"I'm glad you feel that way, Buck. I was worried that you might try to finish the job the Scions began,"
Tovano joked.
"I know you are angry with me for deceiving you, but you must understand, I had good reason."
"You were serving class 2, aren't you, Tovano?" The words hung in the humid air for a moment. Now it was Tovano's turn to look away from Bach. He sighed.
"Serving class. I haven't been called that in more than 50 summers. But yes, I am. Just like you, Bok Omot. I have never told anyone this story, not King Isbiano, not Princess Isabella, not my colleagues when I was a member of the House of Magic. But I shall tell you now.
He leaned back on the bench and cleared his throat.
I grew up in a farming community in eastern Imarina, not far from Fawcett. My mother worked as a servant in the house of a minor lord who owned the farmland surrounding it. I was raised in the manor, helping my mother with her long list of daily chores. I did well in school, but I've ceased my formal education at 10 summers because the Lord needed an extra set of hands, preferably one he didn't have to pay like an adult servant. Still, I figured it was better than working the fields, and he didn't mind if I borrowed books from his study, as long as I had finished my daily work.
Tovano's roomy eyes stared across the graveyard as he continued to reminisce. A songbird perched on a nearby tombstone. Its cheerful chirps took Bach's mind to Sola Valley, but he continued to listen. Tovano scratched his beard and tapped his cane against the lawn.
I assumed I'd found my lot in life. I would work in service to this noble until I was too old for physical labor. But fate had different plans, I suppose. Although not born with the acumen, the lord of the manor had a fascination with high magic, so he would pay a hefty honoraria to house sorcerers to travel to his estate and demonstrate spells. One of these demonstrations took place when I was 14 summers. The sorcerer, named Jalithian, began her presentation with Apollonian's prodigious presence. It's a spell that allows the user to grow to heights of more than 20 feet tall. The room we were in had a vaulted ceiling, but once she cast the spell, Jalithian's head brushed against the ceiling's apex. When Jalithian spoke the incantation, the words, which must have seemed like so much nonsense to everyone else in attendance, made sense to me, like pieces of broken glass forming a mosaic. I said nothing, but I knew I shouldn't understand.
Bach shuffled on the hard stone bench and nodded. Few serving-class people had the acumen for high magic, but they all understood the need to hold their tongues around nobles.
After everyone left, I recreated her spell in the empty room, carefully repeating each word precisely as she had said it. And whoosh! I shot up to the ceiling, bumping my head so hard that I nearly passed out. But I did what the noble said was impossible. I, a young man of the serving class, performed high magic.
Just like I did at Nassim. He must have been as confused as I was. Bach smoothed out the wrinkles in his robe. Its smooth, cool fabric hung awkwardly on his body.
Unfortunately, in my youthful excitement, I didn't pay as much attention to the counterspell Jalithian used to shrink back to her normal size.
Tovano chuckled until he coughed into his hand.
I yelled for help, and both my mother and the lord of the manor came running. The spell wore off momentarily, and I returned to normal. But the lord saw what I had done, and knew I was a threat to the social order. So he immediately took me to Queen Idalia, King Isbiano's mother. She ordered that papers be drafted creating a backstory to cover why I had been raised in a serving-class home. Something to the effect that I was born to noble-class parents who died in a tragic accident, and my serving-class mother agreed to raise me as her own. And no one in the royal palace bothered to investigate. And why would they? The explanation validated their view of the world, so they asked no questions.
Bach furrowed his brow. But why wouldn't you say anything? Why would you go along with this lie? Tovano shook his head, looking away from the young healer.
At first, I went along because the queen quietly made sure my mother lived a comfortable life. She received a small piece of land and a generous pension, a payment to ensure her silence. To be honest, I didn't visit as much as I could have after I entered the House of Magic and a life in the noble class.
His voice trailed off momentarily.
I enjoyed my new life too much to be bothered thinking about the one I had left behind.
Bach clenched his fists in his lap. But you didn't just lie to yourself, Tovano. You lied to me, too, knowing how much your deception would hurt me.
I did.
Tovano exhaled deeply and slowly.
I am not proud of it, but you speak the truth.
The truth? Do you believe that you can declare yourself an honest man now, and that erases your past lies?
No, I don't believe it erases the lies I've told to you and to many more before you. Nor do I expect you to forgive me. But at the moment, honesty is almost all I have to offer.
Well, you should have offered it back at Nassim. Bach stood up from the bench to face Tovano. With a grimace, the old sorcerer leaned up on his walking stick.
That would have been the right thing to do by you. But would it have been the right thing by the kingdom? I still do not know. And while it may be too late, I offer you my honesty now. That, and a renewed offer. I can teach you high magic as I have done with Isabella. There is much more for you to learn. But once you do, young man, your opportunities are endless.
He fished a small glass globe from his pocket and held it out for Bach to accept.
What do you say?
Bach raised his eyebrows. His own eyes reflected off the globe's shiny exterior. The opportunity is as generous as he claims, but it doesn't tempt me. No. You may be a great teacher, but I will not be your student. Bach waved his hands to accentuate his certainty. Tovano leaned forward on his cane.
Bach, please reconsider. Do not let some stubborn grudge against me rob me of the chance to develop those skills.
I don't intend to. As Bach walked away, he added, I already have someone to teach me. At least I pray I do. I just hope Kotarian says yes.